This week in Hey the Parents, we're talking all about tabletop RPGs. More specifically, we're referring to the one and only Dungeons and Dragons. Whether you inspired by Will the Wise, Gandalf the Grey, or a 1980s Saturday morning cartoon about a roller coaster gone wrong, this episode is going to help you decide if D&D is something for you and your kids. Don't worry, because you shall not pass through this episode without understanding how to get started, what's with those dice, what age is the right age, what do you need to buy, and more importantly, we're going to discuss what it is and what it is actually not. So grab those dice and your favorite snacks, because it's time to start this special episode that we are calling Hey Other Dragons, with our special guest Bridget. And of course, we talk about when we were younger, mishaps with their own kids, because in Hey the Parents, it's an honest discussion about raising kids. I'm Michael Height.
I'm Sara D.
And I'm Mike Levine.
Kids don't come with a handbook, so we need your help.
Where do babies come from?
Where do you think they come from?
Is this a kissing book?
Mama!
What?
Hi.
I learned it by watching you.
There are no rules in this house. Not like a regular mom. I'm a cool mom.
We sent them to the best boarding schools. We hired the best nannies. We did everything right.
Hey, Mom! The meatloaf!
No drinking, no drugs, no kissing, no tattoos, no piercings, no ritual animal slaughters of any kind.
Together, we can rule the galaxy as father and son.
This is Hey Other Parents, an honest, messy, imperfect show for raising kids.
Hey, welcome back.
Hey.
It's us again.
Toodaloo. How's it going?
Toodaloo-doo. What's up, Sarah D?
Nothing much. Living the dream.
Living the dream. So whether you are in the car, folding laundry, cooking dinner, getting organized, or on the go, we know that you have a lot of choices for podcasts out there, so thank you for listening to ours. We'd like to send a big welcome to our new moms and dads listening, and a big hearty hello to the returning listeners who are back to put up with us for yet another episode. So just so you know, because of Thanksgiving week and all that good stuff, we're going to take next week off, and we are going to be back for Tuesday after Thanksgiving, after we say goodbye to those stretchy pants and all of those turkey leftovers. So if this is your first time joining us in this podcast, Hey the Parents, it's a chance for a few of us parents who decided that we needed to join our efforts together to try to get through this, as we call it, a survival course. We pick a different theme or topic each week where we discuss from the standpoint of when we were younger, what we grew up with our own parents, and then we shift that over to now as adults, where we did not get a handbook for their own kids. We talk about what we go through, we share some of our experiences, we learn from each other, and every week we feel a little bit better because we have each other and we have all of you. So if you have any comments, questions, suggestions, we'll tell you a little later in the show on how you can get in touch with us here. And without further ado, we're going to jump right into the main part of the podcast. And on this podcast, on this special episode, we're going to do things a little bit different, which is kind of fun. So we did an interview a couple days ago with our friend Bridget, because we thought it would be really cool to do an episode about Dungeons and Dragons. So Sarah and I were talking about it, and I did like kind of a game club sort of thing at my house. We talked about it a couple episodes ago with Ethan and his friends. And we thought, like, well, let's talk about that experience, and maybe we can get Bridget on the show. Bridget plays Dungeons and Dragons. She's in our other podcast campaign. We did an interview with her to try to break down, like, what would it feel like as you, if you were a parent trying to start a club like this, and like what would that would be like, what worked, what didn't, what it's like to have 9-year-olds staring you down, all talking at the same time, how that goes and all that good stuff. So it's gonna be kind of a fun episode. So Sarah D, we're ready to do this one, right?
Yeah, I'm ready to learn all about D&D.
So this works out really well because Sara is sort of like in the role where she maybe she's like a little bit, but not too much, and she's going to allow for some great questions, because like if somebody isn't really aware of kind of how the things work, then it's a good chance to say, like, okay, how does this work? Would this work for my kid? Or like, the questions that maybe come to mind about, like, this sounds overwhelming, or how does this come together? So I think it'll work really well for today. So just to give you some insight, kind of like how the whole thing broke down there. We were looking around for Ethan, because Ethan has like a lot of like hobbies that like revolve around like just reading and books and drawing different ideas of characters and Pokemon, and creating his own ideas for video games and sketch pads and stuff. I've talked about that, over the episodes. And he really kind of got into Dungeons and Dragons, and he was doing this Dungeons and Dragons thing with OutSchool. OutSchool is like one of those websites where you could like sign up for classes and like pay by the class or whatever it is. And he did like a campaign, and he enjoyed it, but he kind of wanted to do something with his friends and find some friends like locally that he could connect with in school and have more fun that way than just playing online. Like, it's different, you know what I mean? Right. So we thought like this would be like a good thing to do. And unfortunately, like, there was no thing to do because the Dungeons and Dragons clubs were like more for middle school. There was like not really an existing club in our local library for his age. This was more like for, 6th grade. So we were like, all right, well, one doesn't exist. We're going to do it. And I think that was kind of like something we just had to make that decision. And like we said, like in a different episode, like it didn't have to be D&D. It could have been like a club for just hanging out and playing Pokemon cards or whatever it is, like just something. And we just felt like he loved this thing so much. And he did it once where he was a dungeon master at our house. And my older guy could not be less interested. And he was getting frustrated with Ethan. It was like a big power battle. And my wife was kind of like just kind of trying to do it, but she wasn't really her thing. So I was kind of into it, but it was like not really flowing like it should have. And like, you know what? Instead of playing with your family, which we love each other, but this is just not going to cut it.
Right.
Let's have Ethan not be in charge and let's have him enjoy being a player. And then I signed up for the driver's seat. So that was kind of like, that's kind of how the whole thing started. So Sarah D knows me really well. And she knows like, this is like,
I'm totally, I'm totally
this.
inspired by that because I think that's so awesome to like, there wasn't a thing for your child. So you decide to create the thing. And, so like what? So okay. So now you set it up. You're like, all right, this is my idea. We're gonna do it. How did you find like kids, like-minded kids, or like reach out to parents?
Okay, so that's a good question. So it seemed like initially, I think for the most part, I think it was a combination of two things. I think Ethan sort of had some kids in mind that he thought would really enjoy it. So like in the back of his mind, he had a couple kids that he knew kind of like. He talked about Dungeons and Dragons and like, either like, kids are really into stuff. They're either like talking about it and the other kids talking about whatever they're talking about. They're kind of not listening to each other. But he found a couple of kids that were kind of like sort of into this like fantasy kind of stuff. And then those were the core, like maybe like 2 kids that I think he would talk to about this stuff. And then he would have our neighbor, Ben. Those are the kids that live close by that are, my older guy and him have kids the same age they kind of hang out with. He didn't seem like he was totally into it, but he's into like creative stuff and art and making things. And then he kind of explained like a little bit more about it. And then he was like a little bit into it, maybe not, but he wanted to come. So we kind of started out with like kids that were sort of into it and kids that maybe were really into it. So we try to keep it like initially I was thinking maybe 4 kids would be good,
right? But
we got up to 6 and I was like, cool, this is fine. So Ethan does this thing where he's like in this program where he's like an enrichment thing. So some of those kids get to work on fun projects together and stuff. So, but like it really is finding like-minded kids, and that was kind of the thing.
Oh wait.
And then it was a matter of like reaching out. My wife reached out, to send them an email and text and see if they might be into it. And surprisingly, it worked out pretty well. Picking a date was kind of hairy. So we kind of had to pick something that was like 3 or 4 weeks out, just so people could kind of like align their weekends and stuff.
Right.
And if you know anything about like, obviously you do know a thing about all these parents listening. If you know anything about where you are on a weekend, you'll certainly know that like you need to do things kind of early, because between baseball practices and dance and, whatever things you have to go to, earlier is probably better. So we thought like maybe like 9 o'clock on like a Saturday would be good, or 9 o'clock on a Sunday, and religious obligation. So we picked a Saturday. Yeah, we did pretty early. So and even though it was kind of early, it seemed to work for most people for that time.
Oh, that's great. I mean, were you guys okay? So were you and Rachel like super nervous? Like I would be like hanging on to my phone, like oh my god, like waiting for like responses and like rejections.
Yes, totally. Because I think like D&D has like this weird, like obviously like it's even still to today. Like you watch like Stranger Things, like it has a connotation to it that like it might be kind of messed up and weird, because of like, all the stuff in the 80s and whatever else about like maybe people associated with like, Ozzy Osbourne and like devil worshippers or whatever it's supposed to be. But it's really, I mean, look, there's no hidden agenda here. I feel like video games are far more violent and a far more intense than this. And obviously, I feel strongly about video games being okay, and violence in video games. It's like a whole other conversation, but I'm not really, I think what's appropriate is kind of what's appropriate when we try to keep things like that on the appropriate side. But when it comes to this, we thought about that in the back of our mind, and we had to kind of like explain to the parents everything that we were doing. We were very transparent and explain that it was just a game, and we sent out like a Google Doc to because I'm a maniac, so I made a Google Doc where basically I tried to make it very simplistic but also like really informative, and I tried to take some of the language and break it down. And what it had on there is just basically like, hey, you're playing this game, and it's a game, so it's fun, it's a game. Right. and it's a combination of like a murder mystery, escape room, a board game, and like a video game.
Right.
It's kind of like a combination of those things where you get to like make a character, and like just like you would make a character in a video game, and then you get to like kind of play out your fantasy of like, do you want to be like a strong warrior? Do you want to be like, save somebody, or do you want to like be sneaking around and be kind of more that kind of character, or use magic and stuff? So they kind of like understand conceptually what we were kind of do. And then from there, like we sent out like this in this document, it kind of explained some choices, and then they had to sit down with their kids and just make some choices. And ultimately, it was just like 4 boxes to fill out. How do you see your character? Like more of like the fighter type, more of the magic user, more of like the person with the bow and arrow that's like holding back. So you choose your kind of character, and then you choose like your species or race, whatever. It used to be like an elf, a dwarf, that kind of thing, whatever. Which sounds very Lord of the Rings-ish. And then after you do that, then the most important part is the story, because kids love stories. So like when we were kids, it was like choose your own adventure books where it was like turn to page 48 if you like to go in the cave. Yes. Turn to page 63 if you want to go into the quicksand. You're like, oh my God, nobody escapes quicksand. It's the 80s. So in this case, it was a matter of like coming up with like some sort of compelling backstory. So which I knew that they were gonna have a hard time with, because every kid wants to be like the hero or the outcast or somebody who's left behind, and we can't have 6 orphans. Right. So the idea was, here's some examples of different backstories that maybe you might have. Like a family member has a dark secret that you have to help them, figure out, or something was stolen and you have to get it back, or you have a hard time in society because you are a dragon character and people don't look to look fondly on your type. But whatever, we try to give them some existing backstory. So that helped a little bit. And then instead of having the kids sort of figure out how to make a character sheet, like the thing that you actually need to play the game, they filled out these choices and then sent it back to me. And then I was like, all right, cool. Now I have 6 documents with choices. Now I have to do something with this. Right. I was like, okay, what do we do next? So the best thing about this is I think that like when we were younger, maybe like the people that did play like in the 90s or whatever, or 80s, the process of making it was so much more complicated because like you had these books and then these sheets that you could either like go to the library and photocopy or buy these books of just like blank character sheets. And it involved like dice and tables and looking in books and figuring out all this stuff. And I think that what they must have figured out over the years is like some of this stuff is very granular and very like very complicated and involves a lot of steps. It could kind of turn people off or make it very like confusing. Right. So they made the process a lot easier. So like on this website, D&D Beyond is what Dungeons & Dragons, the company, Wizards of the Coast, they own it. And it's their like app to use to make characters. So like you could just use that instead of like buying everything physically, and you could have a digital stuff. But we figured like these are kids. They're probably like going to be crazy distracted if they all have like Chromebooks or iPads out in front of them. Like they're going to be so unfocused. Right. So we took everything and we made everything on this website. I made 6 characters that way using the information that they had, and I started to make the characters, and then the choices that they made, I kind of like made them that way. And obviously there were some things that they had to choose. So some of the like the flavor stuff, or some of the like, how do you see yourself as a wizard, or like what kind of like ranger person are you? Do you want to have pets, or do you want to just be kind of like, hiding in trees and stuff? Some of that I had to just take some executive decisions and make them for them. Okay. And then when these character sheets came to be, I printed them all out. And there's a little bit of a side thing about that. It could get a little hairy with printing them. So one more step was maybe just getting like binders, printing out these stuff. And then like on the character sheets, I have these like abilities basically. And to like look through these sheets and find out what these things do, it's kind of like a lot to look at. Right. So I had these, I bought like, basically I think what they are is if you want to make your own like Pokemon cards or something else, I just went on Amazon. I found like blank cards. And then I got like those Avery stickers. I'll put them in the show notes. And these are for making their own like ability cards. This way, when they sit down at the table, they all have like their little abilities. Oh, that's awesome. And then what my plan is, it kind of helps a lot. It's like you could pick up almost like as if you're holding like pieces of Monopoly. Yeah. Like the properties. Yeah. The best thing about this is it doesn't cause like families to fall apart and hit each other like Monopoly does. So then you have the cards in front of you. And then what my plan is for the next session, because this. Well, I'll explain in a minute, like what we did in the first session. But when we get into the next one, it's more like we're in the adventure. So next time when we meet together, I'm going to have the cards like in an envelope for them. And I'll be like, Ethan, please go into your envelope and take out the card that says this. here's a big moment. Your character feels like this ability is coming on. They're going to try this ability out. So I want to introduce things in a very slow way.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're like, overwhelmed by choice, like going to the diner and looking at a menu with 600 things. You're like, I'm just going to have the burger. So I think that's like, I don't want them to feel that overwhelming nature, but it definitely helped like having me make the stuff. But I felt like, oh my God, like the app is so easy to use, like, cause you just click on like a thing and it rolls the dice for you. But at the same regard, I'm like the negative far outweighed the positive, because the idea of them being distracted and not focused on each other and having this eye contact and adventure together was going to be lost. So I was like, we're going to do this on paper. That's just how we're going to do it.
I love that.
And then we ended up buying little dice. We bought some dice packets for each of them, and that stuff stays at our house. Honestly, Amazon's like $15. We got 6 packs of dice that were in these little bags. So we just each kid get to pick their own color. Fortunately, they all found a color they liked. I think Ethan maybe put the dice down in front of them.
Oh gosh, yeah.
In their seats when we started. This way, it was like, I think this kid likes this color. This is more like their character. I'm like, whatever it is, cool,
yeah,
done.
That's awesome. I think that's so cool. Like that you made like sheets. You explained to the parents. You bought dice, got the binders. Like this is like super organized. Like I think, because I'm thinking as a parent, like if I'm trying to make even a club, it may not even play necessarily D&D. It's like, it's nice to have, like as a parent dropping my child off to you, I would be like so impressed. Like this is like a legit club kind of thing going on,
Well, it's funny, and it's funny too because they were like, we invited them in, and then it was very funny because they were like, they were kind of hanging out in the driveway for a little bit afterwards, kind of catching up and chatting. So it was like they had their time outside, and I think it was cool because like they were so cute. They all brought little snacks. One kid brought munchkins, one kid brought like a bag of grapes.
Aww.
We had like other stuff. So they were all Rachel set up like a whole snack thing. So they were loving that. And then I think like the thing is that I think like as I'm talking, I'm thinking of like if I was listening and didn't know about this, I will tell you that making the characters and all that stuff was like 80% of the work.
Okay.
Like that is so much of the work, like the process of like just entering this information and making these sheets. But once you have them, like they're online and they're there, and you can keep going back to them and updating them and printing them out again. So almost like
That's
every
awesome.
session that you meet, you might just print out like a 2 or 3 page, little document, and then it's updated with some decisions, and then they could take on more of a role of like tweaking or updating things of their own. But it's definitely something that like you print it out, you chuck it in a binder. There's a couple of things that maybe you could print out also, so like it's all there for them. And then you got your little bookshelf, and you have like all your kids' little binders on them.
Oh my God,
and
this is like D&D for kids. I love it because
Right?
like you said, like there is a misconception with like D&D where it's like this really big grown adult game. And I guess it's really because it was the precursor to like these the video games like where you're like taking on the character. Like, what do you
I
call
agree.
it? So like
a dungeon crawler or like a RPG game
yes,
or
thank
like
you.
Final Fantasy
right.
or dungeon.
And,
Yeah,
so you're like setting it up, but it feels more digestible for them, especially for like a little kid, like they're trying to figure it out. And like you said, you don't want like 90 heroes or like everyone has like the magic power to disappear,
Yeah,
like,
exactly. I'm an orphan. I'm an orphan too. My family was killed in a war. Me too. And we're all dead. And like, how are you guys going to work together?
Right.
All of your lone wolves. Like, this isn't going to
we're
work.
all emo. It's like, it's not a phase mom, like,
Yeah. We're just going to start a metal band.
Okay.
Yeah, but like the thing that was interesting too is like, in a movie, the characters have monologues and like plot moves a certain way and like all these things are happening. And like in this world, usually it's like 90% of the characters that you run into, which I control because I'm like the dungeon master, they're controlling their characters and they're like a party and they work together, and I'm controlling everything else. I kind of have to remind them like they're in a world where like 90% of the characters they meet aren't heroes. They're just regular people.
Okay.
So like they're working at a coffee shop or they're just minding their own business or they're impacted by stuff, but like they're the heroes and they want to play out these fantasies and play out these experiences of like saving the day. So they come with their own ideas, and it can't be that they're just like the lone wolf who doesn't talk, because I can't have six kids not talking. So they have their ideas for what they want their characters to live out or to play out. And like maybe one kid was like, I have to find my lost brother. Or one kid was like, if something was stolen from our family, we have to get it back. So now it's like my job to kind of like make these things part of the story, but it's not the prime part of the story, but it gives me some flavor to kind of go by.
Right.
And I felt like an adventure. And I guess that kind of is a good like segue into like what we're doing. So there's like they call them campaigns or they call them one shots. It's like a weird word, but essentially what you have is like you can make everything yourself. And for me, I'm new. I don't want to do that. It's way too complicated. Right. So they sell like we didn't buy anything, honestly. There was an online one. Like you could donate like $1 or $2, which is what we did. But we found like an early, hey, you want to go play? Here's a perfect adventure for level 1 characters. So like in a video game, if you play like an RPG game or whatever else, you get stronger, your character increases a level, and it just shows they're a little bit stronger. Maybe they have more abilities, whatever else. So this is like a level 1 adventure. Perfect. Great. So we started the characters out, I think at level 2, gave them like a little stronger, but not crazy. And this adventure was an adventure where basically they go into town and they talk to a person who's like, hey, I have this wizard tower, and in the basement we have a bit of a rat problem. Can you take care of these rats for us? Yada yada yada. Great. So I'm immediately thinking of like Princess Bride with like rats of unusual sizes. So they had to figure this out. So that part is all there, like it's ready to go. But I'm like, how do we get the characters to this part? So then that's where their backstories come in. Okay. So I use ChatGPT, which AI can be used for good at home, people. So ChatGPT, what we did with it is I typed in like, I want a town that's reminiscent of like a John Hughes kind of movie. And kind of like have like a regular town where people are like, into football and pushing babies in carriages and going down the street and, normal day-to-day stuff and like circa 1970s, 1980s kind of feel. Okay. I don't want cell phones. I don't want like cheap ways for kids to communicate. And then I started to enter like their backstories into it. And I was like, ChatGPT, like, I don't need to call it Chat. I just type it. Here's the context of what I'm trying to do. They're going to go to, and one of the kids was like, I want to work at a donut shop called Donuts and Dragons.
Oh, that's so
I'm like,
cute.
Perfect. That's what we're doing.
I love it.
So I'm like, that's where they're all going to meet up. And then I started to like piece together their backstories. I'm like, that's going to be great because that's a good excuse. So in the first session, just to get more of an understanding of their characters, I needed to like get them into adventure. Yeah. So I started it out where I started in each of their homes, and then I played their parents. And then one kid was like, I was a dragon whose parents are gone, and I was raised in the woods by animals. I'm like, that's cool. That's a good backstory, but I can't have you not be able to speak. So true. I had him like found by like a dwarf who's a farmer, and he is raised, but he lives in the barn with sheep. And although he wants to be like, an evil character, he really is a guy who likes cuddly little animals and takes care of sheep. So we had like a funny situation like that. But once we established kind of we knew the story and where they were going to go. I had to kind of find a way to make it connect. So they all went to this donut shop where this character was like, where Ben was like an intern there because he's too young to actually work. And what we did was we made it so that one by one, we went through the backstory of these characters in their home life. I played the parents. We were a little silly about it. Sometimes they were serious. Sometimes they were somber. A character that like maybe lost a family member would be like, oh, you're going to go to this adventure camp, but you're going to first stop off at this donut place, get everybody, and then you're going to go to orientation and learn how to be a hero. Cool, whatever. I don't know what that means yet because I'm not even done that yet. So I'm really just up to like getting them to this place where they have to take care of a rat problem. So what we did was we basically we came up with their ideas for story, and then we made it so that the person running the donut shop was kind of messing with them, and he cast a little spell, and as they were bringing drinks out to the tables, they crashed and fell all over the place. And then because of this big mess that they had to clean up, he was like, you know what? I won't charge you for this, but because of this big mess you made, I need your help. Can you take care of a little rat problem for me? Great, cool. Awesome. So now we have an adventure to send them on their merry way. So that first session between talking about what the town was going to be like, the describing it, and having these little interactions and cute little funny moments with the kids, we had them. It took a big chunk of the time. So then,
I'm sorry, the kids are actually like reading aloud, like some of this stuff, like they're acting out this, like,
Yeah, that's a great question. So like you could play two ways or kind of a combination. So in one version of playing, and it's all what they're comfortable with, and kids like to be silly and like to get into characters. So in one version, they could talk to me as if they're their characters. Okay. So like I make those conversations where I am their parents or I am the guy that works at the coffee shop. And then I could refer to them either as like, hey, Ethan, or I could call him by his character name. And then we're having these silly little dialogue moments. I just get into character with them, and I'm very silly with them, and I answer them almost like if you go to like, you go to like Richmond, and you go to Richmond, Virginia, and you go to like, or like whatever, you go to like one of these places that like everyone's in character. They're talking like they're in the 19, I'm not, like hark hour though, but like, just like, I'm the characters. I'm just talking to them and kind of being silly with them. And I think they enjoy that. And then a kid like Ben, who wasn't really totally necessarily going to be into D&D, what I did was I made like silly, almost improv moments where I'm like, I'm having the boss talk to Ben in the donut shop, and I'm like, Ben, we have to have fresh donuts today. And you know what we always say, a fresh donut? And then I paused and I made him say it the rest of the saying, and whatever he said was going to be fine. It was going to be ridiculous.
Exactly.
And he felt more ownership because he came up with the silly creative lines. He was cracking up.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it was fun. And then all the kids watched him, and then I was like, boom, now you're going to go and you're going to start taking this rat problem, and that was like great because when the drinks fell, I was like, okay, guys, this is great. We're gonna do something now. We're gonna take your dice out. Everyone, look at your dice. We're gonna go through the dice a little bit. I explained the dice where I'm like 20-sided die. Let's take that one out. It's a fun dice. We're all gonna roll it. Cool. Now look at your character sheets and find this box that says initiative. That's gonna help you figure out whatever it was a perception check. Look for this box and look for a number. It's either going to be 0, a minus number, or a plus number. You're going to add that to your dice. You're going to tell me what it is. And then they all enjoy doing that. We practice it. So then that really basic skill was like, this is how dice works. We're going to go one step into this, and we're all going to understand what it does and why it does this. And I tried to break it down that way. So like little moments allow them to be like, oh, now I get why you roll these dice. Now I kind of get why you do this stuff.
Okay.
And that was like helpful because otherwise it would have been like, I got all these dice. I have all these toys. I have all these cards. I'd be like, whoa, this is overwhelming. Yes. Everyone hold on.
Right. Yeah. And then like, how long is each session? And like, are your parents staying? Are they dropping off? Like, what was the ground rules for that stuff?
I think honestly, I don't think we would have cared if they would have stayed or dropped off. I think they kind of just almost wanted to like just go run errands, whatever else. So that was fine. The first session, I think honestly, I think 2 hours is probably the perfect amount of time because it does take a couple minutes to get settled in. And then, depending on like, getting their characters out, getting their paper out, trying to figure out like where they were last time, if there's any questions, then I think 2 hours is probably perfect. If you could do about an hour, that's great. But I think anything less than that, you're probably not going to have enough time. Okay. So a 2 hour session, I think, is more like mindful if like maybe you are planning on not doing it every week. So like if you're like, we're going to do it every like 3 or 4 weeks or something like that, or every 2-3 weeks, we're like, because like everyone's schedule gets busy. Now we're approaching like December and stuff. So like we thought like maybe to do it like once a month.
Okay.
For 2 hours would probably be great. But maybe if you're doing it like every week, maybe an hour is fine because maybe it's people's schedules. So, but I think that, like I said, I think less than an hour is probably too little because like the process of like going through all their homes, going through their back life, explaining the stuff. If this was a section 2, probably would have gone faster. But that just like the home stuff and talking about the characters and like the setting, that was probably an hour. So like when we finally got to getting downstairs and starting to find some rats and they were fighting them a little bit, that probably took about a half an hour to get through that.
I love that.
And I think like this is something that we were really thinking about too is like you can't. It's sort of boring to like dictate everything on rails. To the point where like exactly what they're going to do because that's not an adventure anymore. You're a storyteller,
right? And
if you're playing like a storyteller, you're not really having an adventure because you're just telling them what happens. So I think you have to be like very open to the ideas and like at least you could do it a number of different ways. Either you'd be very open, but these kids are young and they don't really know what all the possibilities are. To put like all that pressure on them deciding everything is just too much. It's too overwhelming. Yeah. So you could think of it like back in the day, back in the 90s when you were like driving and you had your book of CDs and you're like, hey, you want to pick up some music? Pick it out of my book of CDs. And you're like, what's in there. So someone's going to pick up something you probably like because they're your CDs. So like you could have like your options that are available to them. And then like you kind of have an idea in the back of your head where things are probably going to go regardless. But like you have some options in that way. And I think that's kind of helpful. But when they're really young and they're really new, it is kind of good to have some ideas of where they're going and drop little breadcrumbs on where they could go. Right. Because like if they were like, this guy seems crazy, I say we try to beat up the guy who owns the donut shop and we leave. Now they've like caused problems. They're the town police are going to be after them and they're no longer even thinking about taking care of the rats. And that would have been a major problem for me because I didn't plan for anything else. So like we kind of had to like make sure that they kind of went through this adventure in some way.
Right. That's awesome. I think that's like really cool.
Yeah. And then like another thing too, is maybe just like, since we're talking about this, is kind of like, what does that look like? So like you could do it all in your head, like using your imagination where like we passed around like a map of the room or like what it looks like.
Okay.
And we thought like that was kind of like not what kids really like. So next time what we're going to do is we're going to have like a grid, like a board, just little 1-inch grids. And then we're going to print out like little like a little map, the same kind of map but bigger. And then we have little tokens, little circles, or you could really use anything.
Yeah.
They sell like on Amazon. They sell like little wooden pieces. But you could go and print 3D figures out. You could buy them. There's a company, Hero Forge, where you can make them for $6. Go to your local library and print out a 3D model. You know, like cool. a 3D printer. So this way, and maybe we'll even have like an afternoon where they could like color them in and really use a little paint and stuff. Might be fun. And they could move them around the board, and this way they could kind of see where they are in relation to things. And both options work fine, but I really think that kids are very visual.
Yeah.
So one other option that we're thinking about doing is kind of a hybrid thing where I connect my monitor and have it on the table.
Okay.
And then they'll see the map and see where all their characters are from like overhead, like little icons.
Yeah.
And then I go pass around one iPad and be like, okay, Ben, you're going to move your character now. Take my iPad and move your character where you want him to go, and I'm going to take it back. And then this way they don't have like, they could see everything, but they're not feeling overwhelmed with like having this device in front of them to play.
No,
and I think that might be a good way to do it.
I
too.
love it. It's like a nice hybrid, and it's like getting kids out of like you're trying to teach all of them so many different like social skills and like not get some like electronic time like away from them and stuff like that. Like, but they are of this generation that love electronics, and like that's how their world kind of goes. So like, like it's really good. I'm highly impressed with you, my friend.
I think it's so cool because I mean, as a parent too, you're also like you want to do right by your kid. You know, you want to like I want to see Ethan be really happy and you know, and the thing that's kind of weird too is like they gave us all these ideas for their characters, and I'm like, if I'm a genie and I wish and I give them everything they want, that's boring.
Yes.
So I kind of have to take some of their desires in making their characters and like disappoint them at times, but like make the payoff even better later. And I think something that I really want to do in the next session when they're really doing stuff is I want to make like a moment. And we could thank Mike Orlett for this from our other podcast where he was telling me this idea. And I think it's great is make a moment for every kid to feel special. So like whatever they could do, like maybe a character has a special ability or something that they're really known for, something that they put on their sheet, make it so like they could have their big moment to shine. So at least, within the session, they don't feel like it was sort of like mundane. Give them something that like they could aspire to like to do, or like they could be helpful, or like maybe there's a trap and they have an ability to stop that trap, or like they could like, they could sense in the next room that they hear some noise and maybe other characters wouldn't. So something like that, whatever it is. Right. And then the other thing that's kind of interesting too is like a video game, like a world might be boring. Like, cause like in a video game, you might go into like a town and talk to everybody and they're like, hi, I'm the baker. I sell blah, blah, blah. And then like you go out of the town and you deal with like fighting 100 monsters and like you left the town and you come back and the baker's like, hey, we sell the same stuff, blah, 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 blah. And there's no life to it. But like, in a real world, like if all of the heroes left the town and no one's to protect the town, you're probably going to go back and see the town has a problem. So we're trying to make it so that the world is living and the world is alive. And I think the kids are enjoying that they're not against each other. They're working together. And we know, like, as a family, like when we play a board game and you're competitive with our kids, it does not go well.
Never does.
People feel like sort of losers. People get upset. So like in a game where you could actually like be cooperative and like play out your fantasy and work towards a goal, and like an escape room where like, and an escape room where you get out. Yeah. It's like not like one where you disappoint everyone and you fail, but like one where you actually work together. I think that feels really good. And I think that's like fun to see kids like work out whatever the solution is. And sometimes the solution isn't clear. Sometimes you do stuff. And I also like that there's no like, let's save our character and then reload it and try it again.
Right.
No, you do this and you try it and it's going to work out one way or another, or it won't. But
love it.
It's consequences have actions, but like, like 9-year-old actions, not like, big ones.
Right.
But it's fun.
No, I think it's wonderful. I'm inspired. And I hope people are inspired to like maybe take a chance and go out on a limb to either play this game or to like create something for their own children. Like, I mean, I'm definitely impressed right now, I have to say.
I love it. And I'll say, like, I'm nervous. Like, I'm very much like, I'm the kind of person that could probably like plan for 1,000 years and then not actually do it. So like my wife was instrumental in like picking a date, because I'm like, now it's happening. Yeah. And I think another thing too that was really helpful is I had a buddy system. So Liam, who's in our other podcast campaign, he's a dungeon master. Dungeon master is just the person that like sort of runs a game. he sat next to me and he helped me do it. And that was really, really helpful because, like, oh my gosh, like, it's a little overwhelming. If you feel overwhelmed, there's two things you should think about. One is they sell, like, a Target or anywhere. They sell, like, a box set that's kind of like a beginner set. And it comes with an adventure. It comes with pre-made characters. You don't have to really make stuff. It has some dice in there. And that was like $15, whatever it was. And that's like a good way to start. Because I wanted to curtail it a little bit more towards my kids and make, or Ethan, and make it a little bit more like to his speed, I went a little bit to the advanced and making my own characters. But like this Dungeons and Dragons Beyond app has a lot of free stuff on there. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, you don't need a subscription. You don't need to really buy anything. And you can make some really basic stuff and start that way. And then some of the adventures are free online. So like, if you want to go really just free, you could do it. If you want to spend just a little bit of money, you could just get the real basic stuff. And that's like the player's handbook, which is the book that all of the person that's playing a character would need. And then the Dungeon Master Guide is probably the stuff that you might need as the person running it. And then besides that, the free adventures are there. So you're kind of good at that point. Right. And then you could make the characters on the app. I think that you're limited to maybe like 6 or 7 characters on there, which is once again more than enough. Or like you could have like you could make multiple accounts. And I think the problem is if you have a Google account and the kid's under 13, it won't work right because they'll say they're too young. So you can make like a Wizards of the Coast account, which is also owned by them, and then link it. Or you could just have like your different family members make accounts, like the adults, and then you could do it that way. But if you're doing paper, it's great. But if you're doing it on like an iPad and a computer, once again, know your family, know your kids. If your kids are like in 5th grade or so, and you're gonna do it, I would say they're probably, or 6th grade, maybe they're a little bit more attuned to using electronics and not getting totally distracted. But know your kids. I feel like the combination was good. And even like when we do our campaign with Dungeons & Dragons, like our podcast, we still use dice, even though we have the app. Right. The app tells you what to do, but then you take out your dice and you roll them because it's fun to roll dice.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So what do you say we why don't we go ahead and we're gonna play our interview now. So Sara and I sat down with Bridget. Bridget is an adult, and she's great. She's really funny. She's been doing Dungeons & Dragons for a while, and when I first met her at work, somebody was telling me we were gonna be working together, and my buddy Joe was like, "Have you seen our water bottle?" I'm like, "What?" She's like, she had Dungeons and Dragons and Star Wars all over a water bottle. I'm like, oh my God, this is gonna be great. I can't wait to meet her. So that we hit it off instantly. And then she joined our podcast and we became good friends. She was great to sit down with because she did Dungeons and Dragons with her family. She set up some stuff. She used them as like her guinea pigs. Yep. And then she did it with them, and now she does some stuff with her brothers and stuff with us. So I thought get like somebody who actually does this a lot to sit down and kind of explain some stuff. And I think Sara and I had like a million questions and things to ask her. Yes. And it really was a good conversation. And I think when you listen to this, you'll pop out the other side, maybe feeling better or feeling like maybe this is something that like you might be into. And then what we're going to do is we're going to wrap the conversation with Bridget, and then we'll come back for our parenting unplugged. So just hang tight. See you on the other side. Hi, Bridget.
Hi.
So, okay. So basically, Bridget is here. Bridget is, like we said before, she's on our podcast Campaign. And the cool thing about Campaign is it's a mixture of five friends, and we kind of came together to play this D&D thing. And the thing about it is that Mike Levine and I couldn't possibly have any less experience with it. And then Bridget and Liam and Mike Orlup, these guys are rock stars. And Bridget especially really knows what she's doing. So we're so excited because she's here with us. And Bridget, you are in the hot seat because we are really going to get the understanding of D&D, which you love.
That's intimidating.
Well, you are, as I've bequeathed the title upon you as the cool young person. So
yes, thank you for my title. I shall wear my crown.
The crown on the parenting podcast. This is fantastic. So, all right. So let's maybe jump in. Let's get an idea from Bridget. So Bridget, let's just go back. How'd you get involved in this beast? Like, exactly. When did you start playing D&D and all that good stuff?
It was actually very late. I didn't play it when I was a kid. I didn't know what it was when I was a kid, but my dad had expressed interest in playing it 2 years ago, maybe, or a year ago. And then I bought him the D&D starter set for Christmas. And then me and my brother stole the D&D starter set from him, and we used it instead of him.
Oh, I love that.
And then we've just like, me and my brother like just completely learned everything that we could possibly know about it because it was so fun the first time we did it. And then we haven't stopped doing it since then.
Wow, so you started with it. You like made a concerted effort. Like you got the start, like the little like the box that came with like some pre-made stuff, whatever, and then.
Yep. Yeah, the first thing that we ever did was the campaign that comes in the box. And like that's how we all learned.
And to be clear, this box set is so widely known now. Like D&D has become so insanely popular that you could get what Bridget's talking about at like Target. Like this is like readily available.
Or like Barnes and Nobles. I got it at Barnes and Nobles.
After that, then you started to like get more involved with like the official books and stuff.
Yeah, so like after that, when my brother and I were like, okay, we're gonna like, this is gonna be a thing that we're now both invested in. Then we started, like now we're in it. Then we started to like buy all of the books, and like now we have God knows how many dice and DM screens, and my brother's running a campaign, and I'm in our campaign, and it's just like it snowballed from
I love that
from the beginning.
I love it.
So like, okay, to try to get like, I'm trying to figure out, because I just did a campaign for the first time with Ethan, so we're gonna talk about that a little later in the show too. And I think like, let's maybe backtrack and get like a big overview for a second. Like what the heck is D&D? Like, how do you describe it? Tell me this if this makes sense. This is how I tried to like phrase it. It is an escape room combined with choose your own adventure, sort of like a video game where you hang out in person and do it without screens.
Yeah, the best way to describe it is like you're in a movie and you're playing the characters. Like it's like a movie. Okay. Like you're this is a movie. Like our game is a movie, and you are a character in this movie, but it's the game. And
it's a game, right? And I think when we were talking about it, I think like one of the things that I think at one point we expressed like this is a thing where like people take it very seriously, almost too seriously at times. And I think your response to me was like, dude, it's a game.
Like, it's a game, you're rolling dice. How serious could it possibly be? Like, let's be real.
Okay, so let's kind of just maybe talk about kind of like what is involved, like if you're going to jump in. So this idea of like quote unquote buying stuff, like you talked about buying a starter set. So like, let's see, how does the game work? So like, basically, like, what are the roles? Like, what do you have to do if you want to play with some people?
So it's interesting because like when you say the word game, you automatically think like I'm playing against other people. Mm-hmm. And like that's not the case with D&D. Everybody plays together. And it's a very like collaborative game. Like there's no I'm playing against you. There's also no necessarily like winning, which sounds like that's not a game then, but it is. So to play itself, like you need people. Let's start there. And you need somebody to run the game, which you would call a DM or a dungeon master.
And that kind of involves some level of like experience or like willingness to give it a shot.
Yeah, that person is going to be the person that like is the director for the movie.
Oh, okay.
So like they're the ones that are in charge, like kind of pushing you forward, but they also play every other character in the movie that's not your character.
It's like the one-man show of Jurassic Park.
Yeah, so if for real, like they would play the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. like that's the vibe. So like that person kind of either has to be willing to like read everything that's involved with running the game, or they already have to know how to run the game itself.
I almost think of like like a murder mystery dinner. I feel like almost like knowing how to run it in a sense seems like it's sort of like that in a sense. Say 3 times, but it feels like you kind of have to like not mess up the story, and I feel like that's like the pressure that's put on the person maybe.
But like that's also the beauty of it is that like there is no messing up the story because it's your story. How can you mess up your own story?
So I think like maybe like the overwhelming feeling is that like it could go in so many different directions that some people maybe who have like this feeling of like got to read the rules, got to know how this works, and it's one of those things that it could go Would you say like you could do it either like really on the rails, or you could do it really off the rails, and there's not really like a right or a wrong way, maybe?
Yeah, so like you could like there's many rule books. The main rule book is the one that most people follow, but you could read the rule book and only follow the rules, which is perfectly fine. But then you could also not follow the rules, and that's also perfectly fine. Like nobody's telling anybody how to run their D&D campaign, because then that would just be no fun.
So I think that's kind of fun, right? Because it kind of gives you kind of the freedom to kind of explore. So like to give some kind of like boundaries to what we're talking about, they sell these main core books, which is like the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master Guide, the Monster Manual, whatever. You got some dice. We'll explain the dice maybe in a little bit. And then you could buy these extra books, and the extra books are like more like fun, like, you know, side stuff of like treasure and characters and things you could get, whatever, but like extra stuff. But the main thing that people have this decision is like, do I want to like buy a pre-made movie script, essentially, or like a plot, or do I want to like dance around? I don't know if you're dancing, but do I want to play around in a world that either I come up with or one of these existing made worlds, and then take the rules that I have and kind of make my own journey as I see so fit? And I guess you could kind of like sort of like dance around in both if you really want to, and kind of like mix and match, right?
Okay, so like as a starter, if you're using the determined game or whatever, like that comes with the box set, is there can you play that game over and over? Like, is there alternate endings, or is it like one and done and that's it?
Yeah, you can play them over. So like the one that comes in the starter kit, it gives you like maybe like one or two like playthroughs. Like if they choose to do this, like if the people that are playing choose to do this, this is how the game's going to go. But if they choose to do the other thing, this is how the game's going to go. And then it also gives you suggestions for like, okay, we've ended like where I'm going to tell you what to do. This is like what would happen afterwards. Now you can make up your own stuff. Okay. So it's like gives you a script, and then it says like, this is what I would do. Make up your own stuff to now go with it. Okay. And so you could continue then off of that.
Okay. All right.
Which I think is pretty convenient.
Yes. Yeah. Especially if you're like starting off. I feel like you almost need, like, if you're not very creative first off, but you just kind of want to play and then get the gist of it. And it'd be like a good like training wheels.
Yeah, it's really easy to learn the rules of the game with something that's already made for you.
Right. All right, so my kids, when they get into something, they have to buy, like, they always love to do collections of LOL, Shopkins. Like, does D&D have something where I'm going to be, like, investing and, like, hunting down, like, rare stuff for them or whatever?
Oh, is there?
Oh, goodness. Okay, but I do love a hunt.
But you don't have to. You don't have to, though.
You don't have to. But you're definitely talking to the queen of I need everything.
Yes, that's my kid.
Yeah. So the main thing that like you would need to like get, there is no like rare things necessarily, but like dice are the main thing that people will like collect. Like I have a problem collecting dice because I go, ooh, shiny, and then that's it.
Right.
Like there's just way too many. So like if your kids are into like collecting things, it's kind of like when they go to the beach and they just pick up a lot of random shells. Like that's what happens with dice, where they just like collect the dice then, and they just want dice.
And what does dice do? Like, is there like a different, like a number or like, because I've seen some where there's like, it's multifaceted, but
Yeah, so in the game of D&D, the dice control your fate, which is like a common saying in D&D. So the dice, what you roll on the dice controls what you're able to do in the game. And there's several different types of dice. So like, if you're buying a pack of dice, you get a regular dice, like a 6-sided dice that you would play with any other board game. But then you get a dice that has only 4 sides. You get a dice that has 8 sides, 10 sides, 20 sides.
Oh.
And then all of those dice are used at different points to do different things within the game. So like if something only calls for something that can go up to, a number of 4, and that's the difficulty, you would use the 4-sided dice. Uh-huh. Or if you're doing something bigger, it would use the bigger dice, things like that.
Okay.
But I think it's fun because like there's it's like, I think, Bridget, you alluded to this before, of this idea of like how it's collaborative play and it's not like you versus other people. And I think also there's like a common disbelief where like the person that's running it is opposing the players that are playing it. And I don't think that's a healthy way to play. I think people that get it and people that have fun with it, like the Dungeon Master or DM, is cheering for the players, but they're letting these dice, the chances of the dice is going to dictate kind of what happens. So like when it's a bad roll, the Dungeon Master might be like, oh man, sorry guys. Or if you it goes really well, you're like, yeah, that's awesome. Do you feel like that's kind of like a healthy way to play also?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's not that serious, right? You're rolling dice to play a game.
True.
Like it's like that's what it is, and like
and it's not
the person
Monopoly.
running. No, I mean, please, you want to break friendships apart?
Exactly.
Play Monopoly, but but like the person that's running the game is like you're not playing against them necessarily either. Like sure, maybe they're telling you can do this or you can't do that, but they're also rooting for you in your dice rolls. So,
and some of the most fun things happen when things go badly.
Yep. So, okay, let's say that in the game you want to climb a tree, right? That's your goal. Your goal is to climb a tree. You would say, hey, DM, person running my game, I want to go climb that tree. And they're going to tell you to roll the dice. Now, if you roll the dice and you roll a 20 or a 19 or an 18, they're probably going to tell you, yeah, you can climb that tree with no problem. What do you want to do after that? But if you roll like a 1 or a 2, they might say you start to climb the tree and then you slip, miss a branch, and fall backwards. And now you're on the ground again. And like that's where the dice comes in deciding what happens within the game.
Which is kind of fun because it's like it's not really necessarily like the DM's like, I want something bad to happen to you.
Right.
Here's a situation. So all right, that's kind of cool. What about violence? Violence in this fun little game. So like, would you say like you could kind of like curtail it to be like, a little bit more kid friendly versus like being, like bopped in the head and then you're laying down, or is it have to always be like super duper violent?
No, it definitely doesn't need to be violent. I mean, for example, the campaign that me and my brother are doing right now is in like this post-apocalyptic, like nuclear state.
So not
obviously
violent.
That's yeah, not violent at all. Like that's gonna have some like violent connotations behind it just because of the setting that we set it in.
Right.
But over the summer, I ran a campaign that was set in Candyland.
Oh, that's
So,
cute.
like,
Awesome, by the way.
Yeah, so like it doesn't, and there was like really no violence. It was more of like a whodunit kind of thing over like a let's kill the bad guy type thing. So you can kind of curate it to what you want and your audience at the same time.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't feel like it's something like where you need to like know like lore and like elves and dragons or anything like that. It feels like it can kind of take place anywhere.
Yeah, so like for my Candyland campaign, all of my friends sat down and I said, okay, you will all work in a carnival in like Candyland. Like that's the vibe that we're going for. And when they made their character, so when they got to make up like who they wanted to be, my one rule is that you had to pick a candy that your character was based off of. So like all of their characters, like we didn't do elves and dragons and orcs and all of the like fantasy stuff that you hear. Like my friend was like the licorice man and he was just made of licorice.
Right.
It was like fun like that. It was nothing like high fantasy serious. So it doesn't have to be like that at all.
Okay.
Now we're all going to be like, all right, we need a Candyland campaign.
I know, that sounds cute.
What about like the number of players? Like, do you find that is there like a right number of size of players? Like, do you think it was intended for a certain number of people? Like, is a group of 4 good? Is a group of 6? Is it insane to do more?
So I've only played with a maximum of 5 people. And I think like that's like the sweet spot number. Yeah, is like 5 or 6. Cause I feel like if there's more than that, like if you had like 8 or 9 people, it's too many cooks in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's way too much going on. And then if you had less than like 4, there's not enough people then to play with. So like 4 or 5 is like the sweet spot, or even like 6 sometimes I guess you could probably do that. And then that's not including the person running the game. So
whatever degree they feel like they could kind of like herd cats, they're probably good. But if it gets too
like
too much,
I wouldn't be able to handle any more than like 5 people playing because my brain.
How about 6 9-year-olds?
Yeah, see, that's where you lose me.
Maybe the most fun part is making your character and like coming up with like their flaws and like a little bit of a backstory and kind of like intertwining those things into the plot. Do you enjoy that part of it? Is that like, because I know that you've been a DM, you've been a player, so you got to figure out like where does that all do you kind of enjoy that part of it?
Yeah, I think like the creativity part behind it is the most fun part of the whole game, because like you can say like, oh, I'm not a creative person. Like my boyfriend likes to tell me that all the time when we play D&D, like, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm not creative. But like he'll sit there, and when you put someone in the situation where they need to be creative, like on the spot, they will be. And it'll be wild because you're like, where did you come up with that? That's crazy.
Here, stop. This is what we're going to do. And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah, but like that's the fun part, because it's like when you create a character too, it's like somehow you feel like that character that you created is like, it's like your little like baby. And I feel like even kids will understand that like you created that character, like you're fully like you're in with that character, like you and that character are buddies, like we're friends here. And like you start to care about this fictional thing, creature, person that you created, and like you care about what happens to them, you care about the relationships they make, and like that's the fun part, is like that role playing aspect of it. To me, anyway, that's the fun part.
No, I dig it. I think so. Like so there's a couple ways to play, right? Like you could play where you are talking as if you were the character, right? Or you could talk, or a little bit of both. Or you could play specifically where you're like, I want my character to go here and do this thing. Or you could be like, I am the character, and then I would say this if I was in circumstances and you're communicating. You could do both, like whatever you're comfortable with, which is surprisingly a lot of fun to actually just like take on the persona of your character. And like, I mean, this is not like LARPing, running around people like hitting people with foam swords, but like you're talking to each other as the characters, which is kind of fun in the game, because then the DM is going to play all these extra characters, and when you interact with them, it's kind of like a murder mystery dinner. It's kind of like you're kind of communicating and be like, all right, what are we going to do? How are we going to convince this person that, you know, how to be sneaky, how to try to get this thing, how to move towards the goal, you know, how to get the cheese at the end of the maze. So like, how do you prefer to play, or do you feel like it's more of a comfort thing with the people around you, where it's not really a choice of yours, or do you feel like you have some control over like doing the more like play as the characters or not play as the characters?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think it matters either way. Like, yeah. I like to just like be my character when I'm playing. So like I won't be like, oh, like my character does this. I'll just say I do this.
Yeah.
And like that's not Bridget doing this, it's my character doing this. But a lot of people will do like, oh, like I want like my character to do X, Y, and Z, which like is also fine. Like half of my campaign that I play at home, that's how they play, because they're not comfortable with that role playing. Mm-hmm. But like the other half of us will just role play naturally, and as long as like the person that's controlling it knows like your preference, I don't think it matters.
It's fairly obvious in the moment what you're doing. You're like,
yeah,
I'm gonna
exactly.
do this. They're not gonna be like, oh, are you talking about you or your character? Like obviously, you know,
yeah.
This is not a hard concept. And then one of the other thing I think people kind of maybe like the people that have seen Stranger Things, that could potentially be their only way that they know D&D. You can play with like figurines or like little plastic pieces, or I know you and your brother like rock out some 3D printed stuff. You can play that way, but you don't have to, right?
No, you don't have to. You can, in your brain, figure things out.
I like that.
Something your noggin.
I think kids like to see it, you know?
Yeah, I think that'd be cool, like to have little figurines. But like, how do you guys know? Like, is there collecting of points, or like, how do you know when the game ends? And like, how many days is it? Is it like hours or?
So that's the fun part, is there is no end if you don't want there to be. So like the ones, yeah. So like the ones that come like pre-written for you, like they can have an end. Like they have a place where it's like, okay, this could be the end of it. and like that's fine. But like my brother's campaign that we've been playing it for a year and a half.
Oh wow.
That's sick.
Yeah, and it's every week we've played it. We play for like 2-3 hours every week for a year and a half. So like it could also last a super long time if you wanted to. It could last 2 hours, and then by the end of the 2 hours it could be finished if that's how the story ends.
But how do you keep
so it's
track
kind of
of
depending
everything? Like how do you organize
it's
it?
really hard. It is a lot to be like the person that runs it, because you have to keep track of like everything in the game, like everything that you've done previously, everything that you want to do in the future. I have, it's over there, but I have like a binder that like a 3-inch binder full of stuff from when I ran my campaign, just full of everything that we did. My brother has the same thing. So like if you're doing it for a long period of time, it does like you're literally building a world and a story like in front of you.
Did you treat it more like did it feel more like episodes of Buffy? Like where it was like each time you played was like almost like a different episode in a sense, or was it like an ongoing thing? Does that make sense? Am I asking that a weird way? I'm trying to figure out how to like wrap my head around what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, so it can go either way. So like when I ran my campaign, it was like by the end of the 2 hours that we were playing, I knew where I wanted everybody to end up. So like if I wanted them to end at this specific river, no matter what, they were going to end at this specific river. But how my brother does it is like wherever we just get tired and don't feel like playing anymore is where we stop playing. And then it just picks up and continues.
That's a healthy way to do it.
The next time. So like he has to keep track of all of that kind of stuff. And I'm sure he has an end goal at some point. But like when we reach that end goal, it could be 3 years from now, it could be 2 weeks from now. We'll never know. Like we won't know until we reach it.
So like for our podcast, like we're like, Liam, get us to a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Which is not like a normal way to play, because it's like it doesn't have to be a cliffhanger, be that exciting, or be like, and this has happened. Okay, we'll see you next week. But that's, it's kind of fun that you guys have this different mentality, and it seems like they both work, right? For you and your brother, it seems like both versions of this work just fine.
It's a game that's like it's not, like you said, it's not like playing like Monopoly where there's like you have to do it a certain way.
Right.
Whatever works for the people that are playing the game is how you play the game. There's got to be like trust between the people that play too. Like you got to be able to talk to them and be weird around it, because it's like a very awkward thing. I could imagine, especially for like kids, to try to put themselves in like a character, right, and then like not act like this is a weird thing to do in front of their friends, even though their friends are trying to do the same thing. Because me as an adult struggled with that, even though I've known the people that I play D&D with for literally my whole life. So
because it's like you kind of you're gonna embarrass yourself to some degree.
Yeah, because it just sounds silly. You're like, it sounds silly, but it's
like
fun
you go from
once
work,
you
you put down
that.
your work stuff, and you're like, I'm gonna go be an elf. I'm gonna get my bow, and it's gonna be down the party. Do you like the electronic part of it, or do you like to do paper? I know we kind of do a mix of dice and D&D Beyond.
I feel like as a playing the game, it's easier for electronics, but there's the same thing that's on the computer you could put on paper. So like either way, I think for kids it would probably be good to have it on paper as well, because like they can like write on it and like figure things out that way, like of what to do too. Like on a computer you can't like easily like write. Like I keep a notebook when I play my campaigns because I do everything on the computer. But if I didn't have everything on the computer, my character sheet would be a disaster, because it would be there'd just be writing everywhere.
But we're like, Bridget, what
happened?
So
like I'm like I need a new one. But like I know like Mike Orlip sometimes plays with a regular character sheet. So
I know,
like,
we're all looking at him like, what's he doing?
Yeah, like why does he have paper?
But I think like there's also something really tactile and really fun about picking up the dice. And like there's also these moments too, like where, as a DM, like when you're like when things are about to go down and you pick up a lot of dice, like there's an emotional component where like everyone at the table is, oh my God, what is that? Put those down. Like what's about to happen? Like there's no reason for anyone to have this many dice in their hands. So it was kind of fun. I really, really dig it. I'm glad that it worked out the way it did for us. Like, I'm glad we're doing it. I'm having a lot of fun, and thank God for having like a buddy in the process, because I'd probably be floundering without that. Let's be honest. But I think like there's a lot of libraries. There's a lot of like clubs and things that like you don't have to, as a parent, sort of like, you don't need to organize their play. Like, the best part of it is really like letting them come to decision making on their own.
I was gonna say it's also like a good like as weird as it sounds, like it's a good like learning game, like in a real way, because it's like you have to work together or you're gonna get nothing done. Like, you have to work together, or like you have to make decisions, and you kind of like figure out like, oh, what would be more important and less important, and like you kind of learn that way of like, oh, like if I do something, like it has consequences, or if I choose to do this, this could happen. Like, it's like, it sounds strange, but it's a very good like way to learn about how things work, like in the real world as well, not just in like this fun fantasy game.
Like, you do it, you're in it.
Yeah.
Like, whatever it is
Once
you're in it.
Once it happens, it happens.
Which is fun, All right, so we're back now. We hope that you enjoyed our little conversation with Bridget. Thank you, Bridget, for doing this with us. This is our first interview on our podcast, which was kind of cool. So I think Sarah and I kind of enjoyed doing that with Bridget a couple days ago. And now we are back. And the question this week is, are you planning now on doing tabletop or Dungeons & Dragons with your kids, or have you done it? Have you had any experiences? What are you excited about? What are you nervous about? Or what was that like? We'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to answer this question, have comments or questions for the show, you can get in touch with us here in one of three ways. You can leave a message on our Hey the Parents voicemail line at 559-537-5437 or 559-LA-KIDS. 2, you can email the show at heytheparent@gmail.com, or you could check our show notes for our socials. We're on Instagram, and I'm also looking at Blue Sky. So we'll keep you up to date on kind of what we're doing that. So we're back now with this part of the show. It's called Time to Unplug. This is where we talk about things that are going outside of the children. Sometimes we just have to have something for ourselves,
right,
with ourselves or with our spouses. It gives us a chance to decompress, because you'll be a better we if you take care of me. And with that, of course, Sarah D, what is your parenting unplug this week?
Okay, so we just wrapped up The Penguin on HBO Max. Oh my gosh, it's so good. It's like nitty.
I'm so glad. I really want to hear about this. I'm excited. I've been hearing of this.
It's a gritty show. It's not the Batman and Penguin of like the 90s, where he's wearing his little top hat and the monocle. It's
right, because like he's a cheesy character,
yes,
like when in all of these old things.
Yeah, he's so cheesy, but no, he has like a lot of depth. There are times that you're rooting for the Penguin. You're like, oh my God, Penguin. And then there are times you're like, but then he's still a poop head. Like, that's really like at the end of the day, I'm like.
And yet it's still interesting.
It's so good. Like, you're rooting for him. You're against him. All the other characters. I mean, I really love this. This is great. Even if you're not a superhero, Marvel, DC kind of person, this is still something that is very relatable. Like, you could just watch it. Like, you even forget like they're set up in this city of Gotham and this guy's the Penguin. It's just a good show. I highly recommend.
That's crazy, because like the DC stuff, like it's been horrendous.
I know.
Like, I just don't really like I don't really like there's been so many Batmans at this point, it's almost like laughable. But like this I've heard, I keep hearing how great this is. Like, I think I want to check this out.
Definitely, it's really good. And then the thing is that Colin Farrell, I totally forgot that he was in it, and I'm like, who is this dude? And Gene was like, oh, it's Colin Farrell. I'm like, get out of here.
Oh, he is Penguin, right?
He is Penguin. And I'm like, the prosthetics are so good. Like, I'm just so.
Oh, is it so good that you don't even know it's him? Oh, that's crazy.
And then like when you start looking at it, you're like, oh, I see, it's him now. But like, it's just so good. It's so good. Costuming.
Oh, that's so cool, because we watched like we watched like Peacemaker, which was ridiculous and over the top, but like Suicide Squad was pretty good. But I'm excited to see this. I think I'm gonna check it out. But like like everybody else, I'm gonna watch it like now after everyone's seen it.
Yes.
Like, oh, hey Sarah, I saw the show now. But this is cool. All right.
What about you?
This is another Saturday that's going on my list. Okay, so I am this is kind of random. Rachel actually found this a while ago. There is we try to like, I don't know, I feel like I try to like find food that like to cook sometimes or to eat that's like just try to get away from the same boring stuff. And we were doing Skinny Taste for a while, and it's a pretty good website. Kind of like, it's good for like sort of healthier eating and ideas for like stuff to make for the kids. And some of those recipes were kind of like kind of overdoing a little bit, and we kind of wanted to see what else was out there. So there's a website, Sweet&SavorySteph. And what I like about this website is she doesn't have as many maybe recipes that maybe I would have found on like Skinny Taste or another website, but I think most of her stuff is really good. And one thing that I think Rachel initially found that we were cooking a lot of were these chicken salads. And I know that seems so random, but chicken salad, like sometimes during the week, like just having something that's easier to make or just make for myself that I really like to enjoy. And she has these really interesting chicken salads. And one of them was like a buffalo chicken salad. And one of them was like a everything but the bagel chicken salad. I'm like, these are kind of fun. So yeah, so she makes some pretty good stuff. So I've been kind of into them lately. And I think like just some of the recipes, I'm like in the beginning of the week when I'm trying to figure out like what we're going to eat. And I'm finding myself more and more picking recipes from her website. And there were also a couple really decent, I think she calls them like fake takeout night or something like that. Okay. And she had some interesting like stir fry recipes that were really good. And I know this is so random, but like I somehow have like a minor allergy to soy. Makes me kind of itchy. I don't know what happened there. So she does recipes where she tells you how to cook with like coconut aminos and stuff like that, which are like alternatives to soy. Yep. But like knowing like how much to use, which is very helpful. So I find her recipes pretty good. So if you're into looking for something like a little bit different, I don't know, that's kind of a cool place to check out. I like it. And
always need
maybe
ideas.
You'll be like, I want some. Yeah, because like, you know what, sometimes you got to get a little chicken salad in your life, and a little buffalo chicken salad is pretty good. But everything but the bagel, that's nice too. So don't forget, we are going to be taking 1 week off for Thanksgiving. So we'll see you after the holiday. Don't forget to grab your cinnamon buns from Trader Joe's before they sell out, or make your own, because you got to wake up early, you got to put on the parade, and you have to have some cinnamon buns. So I think we're just about out of time in this episode. It's been fun hanging out with Sara D and Bridget and doing an interview and learning all about D&D. We talked about maybe what some of the fear about sitting down and making characters. What do you need to buy? What do you not need to buy? Why does Bridget have a dice problem? And so much more. We're going to take a special moment to thank our listeners and supporters for donating to the show. If you want to help support this show so we can keep making episodes like this one, we do have a link to donate to the show in our notes. If you don't have the means to do so, we really appreciate it when you tell your friends or family about the podcast, and then we can reach more listeners. Maybe we can learn from them and they can learn from us in this growing community. If you have a chance, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Do it right now. Why wait? Right now is a good time. We can't wait to explore this parenting thing again with you next week on Hey the Parents, because every week it's an honest discussion about raising kids. Don't forget to hug your kids and charge those Chromebooks. That's going to do it for me and for Sara. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Hey the Parents is produced by Mike Levine, Sara Desravines, and me, Michael Height. I edit and mix our show. Our intro voice recording was done by the one and only Coltrane. If you like our show, we hope you'll consider going to the show notes to help support the podcast. Check the show notes for social media information and contact, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Peace. All right, cool. That will sync up. All right, good thing I started the music over again, because nothing quite like it on a weekday. Here we go. That's recording. That's recording. That's recording. Okay. Now this is feeling like D&D, right?
I'm used to this part.
Yes, you are. Because like when we finally get started, we're like, and blah 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 blah. Bridget, it's like, hey. Let's see. And okay, here we go. Now I feel ready. Now I feel right at home.